70,000 people, living nearly 3,000 meters above sea level, in a place where rain could vanish for years. No river ran through their city, no lake sat beside it. The highlands around them were dry, thin-aired, and brutal. And yet, they didn't just survive. They built what some archaeologists now call the first empire in South America, 800 years before the Inca laid a single stone. This is the Wari, the story of how they fed an empire in a desert, and what happened when they couldn't is one of the most important collapse stories you've never heard. To understand the Wari, you have to stand where they stood, the Ayacucho Basin in south-central Peru at 2,800 meters. The air is thin, the soil is dry, annual rainfall is low and wildly unreliable. This is not where you'd expect to build a city. Yet this is where the Wari built their capital. Around 500 CE, a culture began consolidating in these highlands. They inherited ideas from earlier traditions, the Huarpa, the Nazca, and the Tiwanaku to the south. But the Wari did something none of those cultures had done. They built a true state. Their capital, also called Wari, eventually covered 15 square kilometers. It featured dense stone compounds, walled enclosures, underground water conduits, storehouses, workshops, and a royal tomb with 25 chambers lined with cut stone. No windows, narrow, controlled entries. Every building was a deliberate act of planning. This was a designed city, not an organic one. But here was the problem that defined the Wari. You can design a city, but you cannot design rain. At 2,800 meters in the arid Andes, water was the only thing that truly mattered. So the Wari became the greatest hydraulic engineers the pre-Columbian Americas had ever seen. They carved terraces into mountainsides with stone-walled steps. Each terrace trapped moisture around crop roots, while excess water drained to the tier below. They built stone-lined canals, some stretching 20 kilometers or more, pulling water from distant rivers and highland springs along mountain contours, across ravines via aqueduct bridges. At the Lucre Basin near Cusco, Wari Waterworks transformed 105 square kilometers of dry hillside into irrigated farmland. Reservoirs stored seasonal runoff, some holding over 200 cubic meters. One archaeologist described it as converting a wasteland into a garden. That was not poetry, that was engineering. The Wari also built sophisticated food systems. Cylindrical kolka storage silos line their roads and settlements, stockpiling maize, quinoa, freeze-dried potatoes, and mole berries for brewing. This ability to move and control food made the Wari an empire rather than just a kingdom. In the Andes, that control meant power. By 700 CE, the Wari were expanding across the region, sometimes through offering water, terraces, and food security rather than pure conquest. At Cerro Baul in the Moquegua Valley, they built their administrative center atop a massive 600-meter mesa with sheer cliffs and no natural water source. They constructed a 14-kilometer canal from the Torata River, snaking along the mountain contour to irrigate over 300 hectares of new terraces on high slopes. 400 liters per second flowed through the system at peak. The Wari managed to deliver water uphill. Locals and Tiwanaku colonists had built shorter canals closer to the valley floor. The Wari's ability to engineer on high, dry slopes created a massive technological gap that became the foundation of imperial power. The Wari also knew loyalty was built over drinks. They brewed chicha from mome berries. At Cerro Baul, archaeologists found a brewery capable of producing 1,800 liters at a time. Feasting became statecraft. Elites hosted gatherings in high-walled courtyards, using food and beer to create political obligation. In one site, Quilcapampa, They mixed vilca seeds into the beer, a hallucinogen from trees 400 kilometers away. Only the Wari had the networks to obtain it. This was political chemistry. Guests drank a powerful psychoactive experience they could not replicate themselves, leaving them deeply indebted. At its peak, around 800 CE, the Wari controlled much of modern Peru. The capital held up to 70,000 people. Provincial centers followed identical grid plans, connected by roads, canals, and storehouses. It looked invincible. The first crack was atmospheric. Around 800 CE, ice core and lakebed records show a sustained drought settling over the highlands. The rains that had been unreliable became rare. Rivers dropped. Terraces had far less moisture to trap. The Wari had built their empire during an earlier drought. Their canals, terraces, and storehouses were all drought-adapted technology. So what went wrong? According to bioarchaeologist Tiffany Tung of Vanderbilt University, the drought didn't directly kill the empire. It broke the political system that maintained the infrastructure. Every canal required ongoing maintenance. Every terrace needed coordinated labor. Every storehouse needed management. Without the organizing state, the sophisticated system became useless stone. By 900 CE, provincial centers were abandoned. Cherobul was evacuated in a final ceremony. They brewed one last batch of chicha, drank, smashed the vessels, and burned the brewery before walking away. At the capital, Wari, population declined rapidly. Buildings emptied. The Wari carefully blocked doorways with rough fieldstone, as if expecting the rain to return and the city to reopen. The rain did not return for centuries. Tung studied skeletal remains from the capital. One group dated to the late Empire period, another to centuries after collapse. During the empire's final years, about a quarter of skulls showed healed cranial fractures, signs of stress, but society still held together. After collapse, fatal injuries spiked dramatically. Violence became indiscriminate, affecting men and women with no clear rules. Women's diets shifted sharply as their access to maize dropped significantly as the food system broke down along gender lines. Burial practices changed too. During the empire, the dead were carefully wrapped in fine textiles with offerings showing care and dignity. After collapse, bodies were dumped in shallow ditches along exterior walls. Some showed cut marks where flesh had been stripped. No wrappings, no offerings. Tung called it a 1-2 punch. Drought combined with political fracture. Without a functioning state, the entire technological system collapsed with it. The people were left with nothing, not even the means to bury their dead with care. This is why the Wari story matters. They built an empire whose survival depended entirely on a complex, managed system. The canals could not run themselves. The terraces could not maintain themselves. Every piece of infrastructure was a political act. When the politics failed, the infrastructure followed. This pattern repeats throughout history, from Rome's aqueducts to the Khmer irrigation networks and the Hohokam canals in Arizona. Yet the Inca, rising centuries later, inherited many Wari roads, terraces, and administrative principles. The empire died, but its engineering outlived it. Some of those Wari terraces are still in use today. Andean farmers continue to plant on stone-walled steps built over 1,000 years ago. The canals are dry, the storehouses are empty. Wari remains a quiet ruin, but the soil on those terraces still grows food. The engineering still works. The state that built it is gone, but the bold idea that a desert could feed a civilization never died. It is still there in the ground, still in the stone, still waiting for the rain. Someone just has to maintain it.